Hello friends, in this video we will learn how to connect to a MariaDB database using Python from a Windows 11 system. This tutorial is created for a beginner who wants to learn standard CRUD operations on MariaDB database using the Python language. So in this tutorial, first we will learn how to install and configure MariaDB on a Windows 11 system, how to configure the port number, and how to start and stop the MariaDB database on Windows 11. Then we will learn how to create specific users and assign databases to that particular user. Then we will grant permission to that user so that he can do certain things like insert data into the database, read data from the database, etc. So after the database and the users are configured, we will learn how to install the MariaDB Python connector. Then we will connect with the MariaDB database from Python using the MariaDB connector. After which we will create tables, insert data into the specific tables, and we will also learn to read data from MariaDB database and display them on the terminal. Now all the Python source codes that we are using on this particular tutorial is available on our GitHub. There is also a companion website that is available which contain the source codes as well as the commands used in this particular tutorial. I have also provided timestamps so that you can skip to specific parts of the video. If you have any doubts regarding the tutorial or the source code, you can post it in the comment section. Or you want any update to our tutorial, you can also say that in the comment section. So this is our companion website. You can find the tutorial here along with the source codes and the commands. So you can download the source codes from here, or you can go to our GitHub. The first thing we are going to do is to download the MariaDB server from the website. So you can go to mariadb.org, that will be this one, and you can now press the download button. So we'll be downloading the MariaDB server 12.1.2 rolling version, and we'll select the operating system as Windows. Now this is a rolling version. So if you want something like a long-term support version, you can go for the 11.8.6. So here I'll be using the 12.1 rolling version. So you can download the exe file by pressing download right here. So I have the exe file downloaded here. So you can just double click on this one and install the MariaDB server. So I'll be installing this on C program files, MariaDB version number. So next, so you have to provide a root password for this particular one. So this is the directory where all the databases will be stored inside your system. So this is the name of the MariaDB service that will be running on your Windows 11 system. And this is the number of the TCP port that we'll be using to communicate with this. So you should remember these two things so that you can easily communicate with the MariaDB server. So now the installation is complete, and now you can see that MariaDB is installed on our system. After you have finished installing the MariaDB database on Windows, you can go to the Windows button here and go for the all, and then go down to MariaDB. So this is the MariaDB database, and you can see that there are two command prompts. This is the first one, and the other one is called as the MySQL client MariaDB. Now the command prompt is like a normal command prompt. This is similar to this Windows cmd.exe, but this one is customized so that all the MariaDB programs are available in this one. For example, if you type MySQL admin, it is there. But if you just type it on a separate command prompt or a cmd.exe, it won't be there, because we have not added that to our path variable. So if you want to do any command line operations on MariaDB, I recommend you use this particular command prompt. You can also log into your MariaDB database using this command prompt also. Here, if you are using a different, if you are a different user other than the root, you can usually use this particular command prompt to log in. Now I will use the MySQL client. So this is the root level access to the MariaDB database. So you just have to enter your root password right here. So if I enter root password here, I will be inside the MariaDB database, and I am logged in as a root user. So I can run SQL command from here. I can create users from here. I can grant permission to these particular users here. All the major root functions can be performed from this particular client. So by default, MariaDB will come with this particular databases. So we'll create a new one later. The latest version of MariaDB database also comes with a graphical user interface database administrator. It is called as HDSQL. So instead of typing commands in a command line, you can use something like this one. So if you are starting from scratch, you will see something like this one. You can press new here. Then you can name it something like root. Then you have to give the password here. Now the port is correct, 3306, and you can open the connection. So now we are inside the database, and you can perform a lot of functions from here, like create the database, run SQL queries, etc. In our tutorial, we will be using primarily command line because it is common on almost all systems. HDSQL will not be available in other systems. So I'll stick with the command line. Now we are going to create a database. So to connect our Python program to a specific database, we first have to create a specific database and a user. So for that particular purpose, I'll be opening up the command prompt. This is a command prompt for MariaDB. Now we have to connect to the MariaDB client so that we can create a database inside the server. So we have to do is type MariaDB, that is the name of the client. So -u, that is the user. So I have to enter into the server as a root user. So I have to press root and I have to give -p, that is the password. So you have to press enter. This is actually the command prompt for MariaDB only, not the usual Windows command prompt. So you have to enter the root password here. So now we are inside the MariaDB server. So we'll create the database. So we'll use the SQL command create database. So you can press and it will be created. You can run the show database. So you can see our database right here. So this is basically an empty database. There is no table or anything like that. So we are going to create a user that is not root, and he will be able to connect to the database MariaDB_testDB. So for that, you have to run the create user command. So we'll run the command create user, single quotes, name of the user, that will be me, Rahul. Then you have to use the close the single quotes, @ single quote open, localhost. Then we have to give the password. So I'll take the password from my tutorial. So this is the password we'll be using. Then semicolon, press enter. So we have created the user. Now we can also see whether the user is created or not by checking the mysql.user table. So you can say select user from mysql.user. So you can see there is a Rahul here. You can also check host also. So it says Rahul localhost. So we have created the user for our database. For the user to interact with our database, he needs certain privileges. That is the right to create tables, to insert data into the database, etc. So to grant him these particular privileges, we have to use a SQL command called as grant. So you can just grant privileges. So you can type grant. So we are going to grant create, that is the ability to create tables inside the database. Then select, that is to get data from the database. Update, delete, alter, drop. Now we have to give the database name. So it will be on this database, that is the database we will be using, to the user. Now we have to database name dot star to this particular user. So press enter. Here I have made a small mistake. I have not given the insert privilege into the database. You can see all the other privileges are there, but I have forgotten to add the insert privilege. So you need to add insert also to this particular one. In case you are confused, you can go to our website. So this is our website, and you can see that there is an insert privilege also, which I have missed. So you can just copy directly from our website and just paste there. So I have realized the mistake later. So I'm just going to rectify it. When you are creating, please use this particular. You have to grant the insert privilege also. Otherwise, we will not be able to insert any data into the table. Sorry for the confusion. Just copy this one if you're confused a little bit. So we have granted these privileges to our user. So the user Rahul at localhost will have the ability to create tables, read data, update data, delete data, etc. Now, if you are getting a ready-made table, that is the table has been given to you by the admin, you may not have the ability to create this one. This will be blocked, or sometimes drop will also not be there. This we are using for development, so we'll be granting these privileges. Usually they are not given, but in our case, we are going to program the system, so we'll grant it to them. You can also check the privileges by using show grant for the particular user. So it will be Rahul. So you can see that Rahul at localhost, identify the password, will have the ability to select, update, delete, create, drop, etc. on this particular database table to this particular user. So this is a hashed password, it is not the real password. Now you can log out from our root account and you can log in as Rahul at the localhost. For that you can press exit. Now you have to log in back as Rahul. So we will be logging in as Rahul at the localhost with a reduced number of privileges. So you have to use this one, and instead of root you have to give my name. So it will be, so we have to give this particular password. So we can see that there is only two, MariaDB_testDB and information schema. So this is our database, and we have to create a table inside this particular one. So this is the basic setup for communicating with a MariaDB server from a Windows 11 platform. So we have the MariaDB server, that is this one, running as a Windows service. A MariaDB server will have multiple databases. So our job is to communicate with the one we want. So that will be this one. And we'll be using a Python script on the other side. The Python script cannot directly communicate with the MariaDB. It needs certain connectors. So what the connector does is that it will translate the Python queries into suitable queries that can be understood by the MariaDB server. So we have to first install the MariaDB Database Connector from the internet. So you can use either the pip installer to do that. So the communication between the Python script and MariaDB is through TCP. The MariaDB server will be listening on the port 3306. And we have to give the appropriate credentials. For example, you have to give the host, the username, the password, and the database name for which we want to communicate with. So these are the basic things we require to communicate with the MariaDB server. So here we are going to communicate with the MariaDB server from Python. So the first thing is that make sure that Python is installed on your system. So you can type it Python. So it's there. So to communicate with our MariaDB server, we have to install the appropriate connector. So we will be using something called as MariaDB Connector. So you have to install that using pip installer. So you can use something like Python -m pip install MariaDB. Now this will install the MariaDB connector on the main Python installation. Either you can do that or you can create a virtual environment using when. So if you're using when virtual environment, the MariaDB connector will be installed locally. So only after activating the virtual environment, you will be able to access the connector. If you are installing it directly on the main Python installation, it will always be there. So you can use this one or you can use the virtual environment. So in this tutorial, I will be using a virtual environment so that my system is not cluttered. So I will just create a virtual environment So you can press enter. So this will create a virtual environment in this particular folder. You can see the .env is there. Now we are going to activate the virtual environment. So you can just type /.when scripts/activate. Now this will activate our virtual environment. And if you're getting an error, something like that, activate.ps1 cannot be loaded because running script is disabled on the system. This is due to the PowerShell execution policy. So you have to change that PowerShell execution policy. So you can go to our website. That link is here, and you can just copy this particular script. So I'll copy this one. The link is in the description, so you can copy it from there. So I will just run this code, after which we will activate the system again. So now you can see that the green text here .env, that means that the virtual environment is activated, and you can locally install the MariaDB connector inside this particular virtual environment. So I'll do that right now. I'll use the pip command, pip install MariaDB. So this will install the MariaDB connector to our virtual environment. So you can see that the MariaDB connector is installed on our system. Now we are going to create a simple Python file to connect with the MariaDB database. So you can save this particular text file as, or you have to save inside that particular directory. So we will be storing inside the directory MariaDB Python -connect. So I'll name it as MariaDB -connection -symbol.py. Save. You can also download the code from our GitHub. So first thing we have to do is to import the MariaDB library. Then we'll create a try exception block. So we'll call MariaDB.connect. So for connection, we have to give certain parameters. The first one will be user. That is the name of my, so we'll just call it user, comma, followed by the password. So you have to give the full password of Rahul, comma. So we are connecting locally, so localhost. Now port equal to name of the, the number of the port. That will be 33 and the name of the database. Now we will call the exception. So this is just the code for connecting with the MariaDB database. So we'll run this code. If there is no error, it means that we have connected with the MariaDB. So there is no error. So we have connected with the MariaDB database. Now we can do things like create tables, insert data, etc. after the connection is successful. Now I'll show you what happens when the connection is not successful. So you can go to Task Manager. So here you can use the Services tab. And you can search for MariaDB. And from here you can stop the database. So you can see the status has changed to stopped. So we'll run it again. So you're getting an error message. Can't connect to server on localhost. I'll turn it back on. Now it's back on and the connection is complete. Now we are going to create a table inside our database. So we'll use the standard SQL command, create table, and we'll create a table called transaction history. This is just for an example. It doesn't do much. So we have an ID, that is the primary key, and it is not null, and it's also auto increment. Then we have a column for customer name called cust_name, another for age, this one, and an email, and a small bill, the total bill, just for showing the decimal and data type, and also a timestamp. So this is the table we'll be creating inside our database. Now there are multiple ways to create a table. You can run this SQL query inside the MySQL client or the MariaDB client to create the table through SQL, or you can use the Python program to create the table, or you can use something like a graphical front end like SQL to create the table graphically also. So this particular line, if not exist, will only create the table if it doesn't exist. If it already exists, it will not create a new table. So we'll run this SQL command using our Python program. The only reason we are able to create this table is because we have granted the create rights to our user, that is me, Rahul @ localhost, and also to our database. Now we have placed the SQL command, that is this one, inside a string, that is the create table underscore SQL underscore query. Now we will execute this inside our Python program. So first we have to create something called as a cursor object. So at first we create the connection object, that is this one. So this will connect with the database. Then we'll use a cursor object to interact with the database. So we'll call it as cursor. I'll create another try. So I'll use the execute method to execute this particular create table query. After the execution, we should commit the changes. So we'll close the connection here. Now we have our basic program for creating a table inside our database. So we'll run this program. So there was no error. So I think the program executed successfully. So we have to verify whether the table is created or not. So you can log into your database. So I'll go here and I will use SQL because it is much easier to see. So you can either log in as a root or your user. So I'll go for root. So you can see the MariaDB database is here. So you can see there is a table called transaction history inside this one. This is the table. And you can see that we have created the ID, customer name, customer age, customer email, and all the columns are here. So you can also see the data type of this particular column. Now we have to add some data into this particular column. Please note that all the code along with the SQL queries are available on our website. The link to the particular website is in the description of this particular video. So we have created the table inside our database. Now it's time to insert some data into our database. For that we will use the insert command. That will be this one. So we have to insert the data into the table. So the basic syntax is this one. You have to give the name of your table here and the name of the column names. After which you have to give the values. Now you can actually give the values directly here instead of the question marks. For example, if you are giving if your column name is name, you can actually substitute the name right here. But in our case, we won't be doing that because we are updating it through a Python API. And it will do a lot of background check on the type of data that will prevent a SQL injection attacks. So we'll be using this format. So the function, that is the method, will replace the question mark with the actual values that we want to insert into the table. So the name of our table is transaction history, and the first column is named ID, that is the primary key. We won't be updating that one, that will be automatically updated. So we'll start from the second one, that is the customer name, customer age, then email, total bill, and time of pay. Time of pay is a type of timestamp which will contain both the date and the time. So that will be generated automatically when the information is inserted into the table. Then we have 5 question marks which are used to replace the actual values. Now these are the values that we'll be inserting into our database. So this is just a placeholder name, customer name equal to Steve Harrington, age equal to 28, and customer bill. The time will be inserted when the query is executed by the Python script. So we have to import the date time. This is for generating the timestamp. So the first part is the connect with the server, which is similar to the previous one. Now we are creating a cursor using the connection.cursor method. After which we'll create a timestamp using this particular function, datetime.datetime.now. Now you can print it if you want to. So we'll know the date time. Then we will use the cursor.execute method. So it will take the SQL query and the corresponding data. That is the customer name. So when the query is inserted, the query is executed, this particular values will be automatically inserted into our database. So you can also directly give the customer name, like you can give it here a string or something like that. But I'm using a variable, so it's much easier to manage. Then finally we commit the data. Now we'll run this thing inside our virtual environment. I'm using the same file, just copied the data into that particular file. So I'm going to run the code right now. The code has completed running, and we'll use the EDSQL, that is this one, to see what is the status. So you can go to the data section and you can see that a value has been added into the database. So we have the ID, that is the primary key, customer name Steve Harrington, customer age is 28, customer email is this one, and total bill and time of pay, that is the current time of the insertion. So this is how you insert a single row of data. If you run this program again and again, it will simply insert Steve Harrington again and again. So you will have to have a method to get the values from outside the system. In the previous example, we learned how to insert a simple row or a record of data into our database. Now let's say you want to insert a bunch of records into our database. You can do it by using this particular code. Here we have created a list of tuples actually. So the data is actually formatted in the form of tuples. So inside these brackets, you can find the data, the name, the age, and the payment, as well as the time. So they are organized in the form of a list of tuples. So we'll insert this list of tuples into our database. So we don't have to change any of the other things. You can use the same thing, that is insert into transaction history. No need to make any change here. And we do the same thing. We open the connection to the MariaDB database here. The only change we are making here is that we'll be using the cursor.execute many method instead of the cursor.execute. So execute is for a single row, execute many is for a multiple rows. So we first insert the SQL query, that is the insert data SQL query, and then the list of tuples, that is customers. Then we run this particular code and then we commit the data. So it's very simple. You just have to provide the customer list, save the code and then run it. So as you can see, the rows change equal to 10. That means we have updated 10 rows, or we have inserted 10 rows into the database. So you can see that by checking out the EDSQL data, you can go here and you can use the refresh button. So now we have 11 data because previously we have inserted Steve Harrington. After that, all the other data is also inserted. So this is how you insert multiple data into the database. Now we are going to read the data from the MariaDB database using Python. So there are three methods for reading data from the MariaDB. The first one is called as the fetch all. So this function would fetch all the data that is available on the database and it will send it into the memory from which we can manipulate it. The other one is that called as fetch one, which will fetch only one row, while the other one is known as the fetch many size. So we have to give a size, for example, 5 or 6 or some number like that. The function will fetch that many rows from the database and give it to us. So we'll stick with the first one right now. We will learn about the fetch all function. So this is going to read the whole database in one go. So this is okay for a small database like the one we have. Now, if you're reading billions of rows from the database, it may corrupt the memory or it may overrun the memory. So this should be used with caution. So we'll be running this particular SQL command, that is select star from transaction histories. So this will take all the values from the transaction history table and it will display it on the terminal. So the usual things, connect with the terminal, connect with the server here. Then we are going to use the cursor.execute. So this will execute the SQL query read all. That means it will select all the data that is available from the database. Then we'll call the cursor.fetch all, which will read all the data. And all the data will be inside this particular table, entire table. Then we will use a row for row in entire table and display it on the terminal. So if I run this one, it will read all the data and display it on the terminal. So we should be careful while using this particular one, as the cursor will get all the data from the database. So depending upon the size, it may corrupt the memory. We only have 11 values, so it won't bother us. As you can see that the whole values has been returned to us. So there are total 11 rows with all the values. So they are returned as a tuple. Now we have seen the fetch all method. Now we are going to use the fetch one method. It is used when you know the result of the executed SQL query is a single line. For example, I am going to select star from transaction history where ID equal to 5. This would be a single row. So for these types of queries, you can use the fetch one. So you can modify this one. You can call it fetch one, read a single row. So you also have to change the query from here. Now you have to add where ID equal to 5 or 6 or anything. So when you execute this particular query, a single line will be returned. So you can use the fetch one method to read that particular line and display it on the terminal. So the ID is 5 and you can see it's Elena Rodriguez. So you can go here and check the ID. So this is the line that we have copied. So this is how you use the fetch one method actually to get a single row. The other one will be the fetch many method. So you can just give it a number right here, 5 or 6. So it will fetch that much lines from the database. Now let's say you're executing a query called select star from transaction history and you only want 5 numbers. So you can use the fetch many command. It's similar to fetch all command, but instead of fetching the whole database, it will only fetch 5 or 6 n number of rows from the database. So that's how you use the fetch many. Now updating a value in MariaDB usually involve using the update SQL query. That means that you have to update the table name. Then you have to set the column equal to new value and column 2 equal to another value using a unique ID. So here unique ID will be the primary key, that will be the ID. So you can run this particular SQL query using any of the execute functions and then read the data back using either fetch one or fetch many. Usually this will result in a fetch one. Same here for the deleting a row in MariaDB also. You just have to run this particular SQL command using the previous functions.